Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege of Parshas Vayeshev. And the Parsha, of course, contains the overwhelming episode of the sale of Yosef. We see the brotherly strife, the discord, and that's really putting it mildly. Brother turns against brother until things really hit their boiling point, where the brothers rob Yosef of his dignity, of his clothing, throw him into a pit, sell him as a piece of property, and Yosef finds himself all alone, not just geographically, but spiritually, familially, in Egypt. But of course, again, through Hashgacha Pratis, incredible divine providence, Yosef experiences a meteoric rise to power. And in that respect, he becomes the second in command of Potiphar's home. Potiphar, a very influential individual in Pharaoh's court, puts Yosef, a Hebrew slave, in charge of his entire home. And the Torah then tells us about the dramatic narrative of Yosef and the wife of Potiphar. And the Torah goes on to tell us that the wife of Potiphar consistently tries to seduce Yosef. And our dear friends, understand just the enormity of this event. So first of all, for a young man to be tempted by, I'm sure the wife of Potiphar was a very beautiful woman, so be tempted day in and day out, and to be able to resist that temptation is incredible. But more than that, for Yosef was all alone. And probably, again, here was a powerful woman reaching out to him. Not just is there like a lust element to it, but there's probably a belonging element to it. Yosef has been cast away from his family. And here, someone is offering him companionship. Someone is offering him love. Someone is offering him the ability to finally not feel alone. And the Torah tells us something absolutely amazing. This is Parak Lamed Tes, Pasuk Ches, chapter 39, verse 8. Vayimo'in. Yosef refused. He refused. Vayimo'in. Vayomer al Eshes Adonav. And he said to the wife of Potiphar, to the wife of his master, Hein Adoni lo yada'iti ma babayis. My master has withheld nothing from me in the home. V'chol asher yesh lo nasa biyadi. And my master literally, again, has so much faith in me that he puts everything in my hands. Eineno gadol babayis hazeh mimeni. No one is more powerful in this entire home than me. V'lo chashach mimeni mu'uma ki'im osach. And the one thing I can't have, Yosef says, is you. The one thing that Potiphar, I'm sure he didn't explicitly articulate it, but it's understood, is off limits to Yosef, is Potiphar's wife. Basher at ishto, you're his wife. Ve'ech eseh hara hagedola hazos v'chatasi le'elokim, or le'elohim. How could I go ahead and, how could I betray my master like this? So on the most basic level, Yosef is making almost like a hakaras hatov, like a gratitude argument. This man, Potiphar, has given me everything. He's given me station. He's given me life. He's given me responsibility. He's restored my dignity. And the one thing I have to be mindful of is his wife. How could I trespass? How could I do this? Even leaving aside the theological components of this, Yosef says. How, as a human being, how could I do this to a man who has given me so much? Essentially, probably from Yosef's perspective, another chance at happiness in life. But the profundity, right? Vayimo'in. And if you notice, by the way, interestingly enough, the trop on the Vayimo'in is a shalsheles. Vayimo'in goes up and down 3 times. The trop is a zigzag. And the Sfarim write that the trop highlights the idea that this was not easy for Yosef. We read this story like, of course, Yosef resisted. Of course, Yosef resisted. Yosef was a tzaddik. But Yosef was also a human being. Yosef was a tzaddik, but Yosef was also a man. Yosef was a tzaddik, but Yosef was also all alone in this world. And as we mentioned before, this was so much more than an overture to satisfy a physical desire or lust. This was an opportunity for relationship. This was an opportunity for belonging. This was an opportunity to establish a connection with someone of much greater station than himself. For Yosef, this represented so much, and the Vayimo'in is the back and forth. Don't think for a moment that this was simple for Yosef. Don't think for a moment that, of course, I'm not going to sin. I'm Yosef HaTzadik. Of course he's Yosef HaTzadik. But do you know why he's Yosef HaTzadik? Because it was so difficult. The back and forth, right? I will, I won't, I really want to, but I can't, I have to, I can't let myself do it. The constant back and forth that Yosef was experiencing is Yosef Vayimo'in. He had to refuse himself the ability to give in to this most basic and natural desire. Yosef had to muster up superhuman strength in order to be able to abstain from engaging in this carnal avera. And Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, the Rebbe writes something so incredibly beautiful. Listen to the Rebbe's words. The Divrei HaMasal says Vayimo'in. He's commenting on this one word, that Yosef refused. He refused. Again, not just didn't sin, he refused. He refused to yield to this temptation. So the Rebbe says, listen to this. Achshav benakel yoser la'amal b'nisayon. The Rebbe says, contemporarily, it is much easier for us to stand up to our temptations. Why? Ki harishonim sha'amdu b'nisayon kvar shavru kol kach klipa zo shel taivazu. Because earlier generations who stood up to their desires, who stood up in their tests, so to speak, literally translated, they destroyed or they demolished the shells, the husks, the coverings of this particular taiva. I'm going to read it and then we'll explain it. Until today, even a simple Jew has the ability to go ahead and stand up to temptation because previous generations did so. What is the Rebbe saying? The Rebbe is highlighting a profound and incredible idea. When I am tempted with something and I find the courage to resist, when I have an opportunity to sin or to satisfy a desire or an illicit lust, and I say, you know what, no, I'm not giving in, I'm keeping it together. That act of restraint, that act of defiance of the carnal urges and desires of human beings, that act of restraint doesn't just change me. It changes the world. It changes the world. I've diminished the hold of that desire for future generations as well. An overwhelming yesod. When I find the courage, when I muster up the courage to resist the temptation, not only have I prevented myself from sinning, but I've, so to speak, changed the spiritual DNA of my future generations. So that now my children, my grandchildren will have the ability, the strength to resist their temptations. And again, their ability to resist will become easier because I resisted. And the Rebbe quotes the Gemara. The Gemara says, Takfo shal Yosef and Visunuso shal Boaz, which literally means the strength of Yosef, literally translated means led to the humility of Boaz. Now, what does that mean? He says, Ki tokef hanisayon shal Yosef atzadik, right? That which Yosef struggled with was easy for Boaz. What does that mean? So remember, again, we know the story of Megillas Rus, right? And Naomi gives Rus this very interesting piece of advice going to Boaz. He's sleeping in the granary, lay down at his feet, and he'll tell you what to do. Strange story. But Chaver, think about this. Boaz could have done anything he wanted. He could have done anything he wanted. He was a man of influence. He was a man of power. He was a man of station. Who was Rus? Rus was a Moabite convert. She was already living on the periphery of the community. He could have done whatever he wanted, and that would have been it. It's the middle of the night. No one's around. But when you see in the Megillah says something so interesting, which is you don't see a struggle on the part of Boaz. You see fear, right? Boaz wakes up. He's very alarmed. He's not knowing what's going on over here. But he acts in such a beautiful and caring and loving and holy way. You ever wonder, where did Boaz get that self-restraint? Right? There's a beautiful young woman laying here at his feet in the middle of the night. And again, he doesn't have all that's restraint. Where did it come from? The Gemara posits, it came from Yosef. When Yosef overcame his struggle, that by definition gave Boaz the strength to overcome it and diminished the desire for Boaz. When we overcome our struggles in life, not only do we make ourselves greater, but we endow future generations with greater strength to overcome their struggles as well. Chavra, what an overwhelming and incredible idea. Because we all struggle with different things that we desire, right? We all struggle with different averos that we constantly contend with. And it's hard. It's really hard, right? It's hard sometimes to muster up the strength to be able to not engage in this avera, to not engage in this action, to not speak in this way, to not behave in this way, to not continue down this road. It's hard to muster up the self-restraint to become the kind of people we need to become. So first of all, it's validating to know that if it's difficult to muster up self-restraint, you're not alone. Yosef HaTzadik also had struggles, the back and forth, the up and down. It was a struggle for Yosef also. What makes Yosef great is not that he didn't have the struggle. What makes Yosef great was that he had the struggle, but he still chose to rein it in. But Chavra, if we could find the strength to rein in the things that often derail us in life, understand, not only Are we doing something incredible for ourselves? But we're changing the fabric of our families. We're changing the fabric of future generations. Future generations will be stronger because of our strength. You know, for those of us who are privileged to be parents, what wouldn't you do for your child? We make a lot of sacrifices for our children. We make a lot of sacrifices for our grandchildren, and lovingly and willingly. So if someone were to tell you, listen, you're tempted with an Avera. If you exercise this level of self-restraint and don't engage in this illegal or illicit behavior, not only will you be better, but life will be easier for your kids. Life will be easier for your grandchildren. That future generations will have strength, that what looks like a struggle for you, they'll be able to overcome without an issue because of your strength. Who wouldn't sign up for that? We do anything for our children. We do anything for our grandchildren. And it's not just even our biological family. If someone were to tell you, that if you exhibit self-control and don't indulge every single want, that you'll make Klal Yisrael stronger. That somehow, some way, my act of vayimain, my act of restraint, somehow goes ahead and has an effect on everyone else and makes their struggles easier. Chevra, who amongst us wouldn't take that offer? And Rabbi Nachman says, each and every day, that's the deal on the table. Life is filled with tremendous desires and wants, and every day we face all kinds of nisyonos, and it's important to recognize sometimes we win, and sometimes we lose. That's just the way that it works. And it's validating to know that even a Yosef HaTzadik had his vayimain moments of back and forth, not exactly knowing which way to go or what to do. But it should give us strength that when tempted, and when we want to go down a road that perhaps I know is not really the right one, to stop and think for a second. If I can muster up the necessary strength over here, not only will I be better for it, but I'm helping my kids. I'm helping my grandchildren. I may be giving that yid down the block or that yid the continent away the additional strength that he needs or she needs to be able to overcome their temptations, their desires, their wants. If we live life knowing that because Yosef overcame his desire, Boaz didn't even have to struggle. If we recognize that our self-restraint, our vayimain, has that level of power, I think that'll give us the chizuk to pull it together in those moments of temptation, those moments of difficulty. Will we win all the time? Of course not. Always gonna lose at some point. That's the nature of life. But if we could win more than we can lose, then that's a collective win. If we could rein it in more times than not, if we could be strong more times than not, then not only do we strengthen ourselves, but we will better the lives of future generations, and we will better and uplift the holiness of our nation. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos.